Fans, and welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. You can probably tell by the dulcet tones of my voice that I am not Carruthers, I am Bice, but I'm joined by Paul Carruthers, Communications Manager for MotoAmerica, and I'm the sidekick in this game, and we've got a guest on today, Mr. Joshua Kurt Hayes. But before we bring him in, I want to ask Paul, hey Paul, I'm losing track of everything. Is Thanksgiving next week?
Thanksgiving is next week, yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I got to get ready for that.
But if you're in California, you're not allowed to eat turkey with any more than one other person. and it has to be a sandwich.
Oh yeah, and when they and by the way, when you have a sandwich that's supposedly a Thanksgiving sandwich and they put cranberry sauce on a sandwich, that's the most horrifying thing I've ever heard of. How about you?
I actually really enjoy that, Sean Bice.
Oh, I figured. So Josh Hayes, you like that? Oh.
I order it when I go to McAllister's when I'm in the South.
Really? Any time of year, not just Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Oh no, I cannot handle fruit or anything with my regular food. You probably like pineapple on pizza and.
My wife does. I don't particularly.
Applesauce with pork chops.
Her father does that.
Oh, that's what I do.
I don't have. I do appreciate it, though it's not probably my favorite. I don't mind it.
No, it's the way to go. What I don't understand is I think turkey is extremely overrated. It's like if everyone likes turkey so much, why do they only eat it once a year?
It smells good.
Yeah, I just think it's a pain in the ass. I'd rather just have like a steak.
Dry.
Yeah, I'd rather have a steak.
I think you're right. I agree with that. So we got Josh Hayes on here after a pretty successful year for Josh without actually, he did race early in the season, early in the year in Australia, but, you had to do with a lot of success this year on the track. Certainly Cam Petersen with his championship, but I think you work with Richie Escalante a little bit too, and a few other riders, Kevin Almeida, obviously Garrett Gerloff, who's just going nuts these days. So, Josh, you must be feeling pretty good about your skills, not only behind the handlebars, but when other people are behind the handlebars. How's that going for you?
I don't know if it's skills or I was just smart and picked guys who were winners from the get-go, So
well, that's a good way to do it too. That's a good way to do it.
I guess it's how you look at it. I think I picked winners to work with in the beginning, and the thing about working with the guys at that level is I'm pretty lucky because there's not a lot about riding a motorcycle that they don't already have figured out. And it seems like I'm more of a psychologist than much of anything else. And just helping them, I think that the best description would be I try to maintain helping them keep their eye on the ball. That's what
and I mean, the thing, and I failed to mention Bobby Fong, who was a 3-time Superbike winner this year, which was fantastic too. So that's another one to add to your success. The thing that's interesting, Josh, is Bobby Fong is quite different from Cam Petersen, quite different from Garrett. Richie, obviously there's a little bit of lost in translation there, but he obviously has his own style too. Would you say these riders are all pretty different from each other?
Yeah, each one's unique. Every single one of them's unique. And, they're all looking for something a little different, and it seems like there are a lot of the top guys that I've kind of had my hands in some way or another, a small bit. Richie's work this year was Richie's work. I really, other than a few, like we're still friendly, and I worked with him a lot last year when he was doing the Hudson program. And, this year, other than a few, he came over and said hi and a few kind words my way. And it was nice to hear him say, hey, thank you. The stuff we worked on last year are playing a big role this year. It was nice to hear. And he's just a classy guy, but his needs were definitely different from those of Bob. And Cameron Peterson's a fairly unique situation where what he does on a motorcycle, I think his natural aptitude and talent is just pretty strong, and he needs something that sometimes he just needs ideas. With him, I can just kind of watch and say, hey, I see this thing and maybe try this and maybe it'll help. And it's uncanny how often it can work, but it's also pretty incredible to watch a guy who can visualize it and then go out and just make it happen and never take a step backwards in the process, so it's pretty cool to see that. And then just talking about some focus things, and then on Matt Skolt's side with the Westby crew, it's almost more being a part of the crew than it is so much that I do a lot of spotting for Matt, but Matt's he's how would I put it? He's a man's man. He kind of keeps his program pretty tight and to himself and does his own things. And we discuss the things that I see on the racetrack, and we kind of leave it alone after that. So otherwise I'm working with Ed and Herschel and Chuck, and sometimes I'm just helping them break down what we think he's trying to explain and figure out how to work it, so it's more of an integrated piece of the race team than anything. So, and then you get into a handful of other guys who are still trying to figure it out and just break things down about the racetrack and things like that. And, I'm learning a lot of what to look for from the side of the racetrack, and how to visualize and how to communicate what I'm seeing. That stuff's getting better all the time, as much as I hate being on the side of the racetrack. And so, I mean, I feel pretty good about how all of my guys have done. It's difficult where I'm sitting, because I don't know that I can take much credit, because, I've been doing this a long time, and I know that you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink, kind of thing. And all those guys and the success they're having is definitely because of their work, not mine. And I just try to point them in a good direction so that they can get the best out of themselves.
It must be kind of fun when you actually have, I think, like a younger guy, maybe a less experienced guy. And I'm speaking of Kevin Almeida, because I know you worked with him this year for the first time, I believe. He kind of reminds me of Richie in a way, like Richie 2 years ago, where I always get the feeling when I'm watching him, I'm like, oh man, he's over his head and he's going to crash. And sometimes he doesn't, and sometimes he does. But I kind of remember Richie being like that too. And I remember there always seems to be guys that are like that. Like they go over their head to match the leader's pace when they're just not quite ready. But then the next year you notice them at the leader's pace and they're comfortable with it. Is that kind of how it works?
I have a huge respect and appreciation for someone who will ride like that, because it's not an easy thing to do, but it's so much fun to watch a rider who you can see the desire to succeed in them when they ride a motorcycle. And, even Bobby, I feel like I see a lot of that. It's not just precision. You can see the heart in Bobby, that he's putting everything he's got out there. And you see that a lot with Kevin. And, honestly, I didn't work with Kevin a whole lot. Kevin spent some time with us here with the family, staying at the house. And, I talk and would point out a thing or two here and there, but I had so many things going on, actually, that Kevin, as big a fan as I am of Kevin, I wasn't able to give him a whole lot of time and input. But I'm a huge fan. And, Melissa marked him quite a while back when he was on Junior Cup, and was like, that's a guy I would really like to work with, and I mean, her and I kind of see the same things, that you talk about any minute he could crash. And I feel like any minute is this breakthrough performance. It's just going to take his confidence to the next level. And then it's going to be like, stand back and watch out, boys, here he comes.
So will you continue? I mean, do you think you'll work with him more as we go forward? So. And also, I mean, it's probably an easier thing to get a guy to slow down a little bit than a guy that's not willing to go the pace.
Always.
Right.
Always going to be easier to back people up a touch so that they can acquire a skill or whatever it is and then move forward with it. It's always going to be difficult, because this is such a risk-based business that, if somebody's mitigating risk, how do you tell them, like, hey, you're going to have to try harder. I need to see. It's never easy to go that direction. It's always easier to go, hey, whoa, you're going to do this till you get hurt. So let me help you do it the right way so that maybe you don't get hurt. And, that's an easier thing to figure out and point out. When it's the other way, it's hard to explain, because I don't know what it looked like from the outside, but I wanted to win more than I wanted the air I could breathe. And I was willing to risk so much to make it. And I just had to go at it with this wrecking ball and hope that I made it before I killed myself. and fortunately succeeded. And there was so many times in my career where I kind of had to go through something like that. I remember John Ulrich calling me and saying, if you crash into the bike, you're out of a job. And I'm like, if I go slow, he's not going to give me a job anyway. So you just go at it with reckless abandon anyway, and hope that you succeed before the guy fires you. It was all or nothing. There wasn't between. I didn't know how to go faster without trying harder. So it was all I had. And so I can remember in 2006 at Mid-Ohio racing Eric Bostrom for the Formula Extreme Championship, and it was our second time at Mid-Ohio that year. Eric had beat me the time before. It was the last race of the year, and whoever beat the other one won the championship. And I looked at Melissa on the grid and I go, hey honey, I need you to know this. I will not ride this bike home in second place.
Wow.
That's so it was a long race for her.
I bet.
And I led every lap at a +0 until 2 laps to go, where I finally got a little bit of space on him, but it was
that was truly win it or bin it then.
Absolutely. And I meant it. That was the scariest part, was I meant it. So I have a huge appreciation, and I can understand, and I know how to help someone who's in that position. And so yeah, it's always going to be fun. Kevin is a fantastic young man to work around. He's gracious and appreciative, and wants it very, very badly, and is willing to do whatever it takes to get there. So of course that's always fun to be around, and something that I hope that we can sort out and I can do some more stuff with.
Does anything get lost in translation with him or Richie, Josh? Obviously their English is a second language for them. And I know you have said, the thing I love most about Kevin is he's always got a smile on his face. But you were saying one of the reasons he does that is because he doesn't always understand everything that people are saying to him. So he figures if he smiles,
just polite.
Does he get what you're saying?
Most of the time. I've learned to ask the question. I've learned to go, hey, do you understand everything I've said here? And he'll say yes, or he'll be like, and we'll go through it again. It takes a bit of patience, and one thing that's really helped me in communicating with guys like that is being married, because I learned that you can't just say the same thing louder and get a different result. You actually have to say something different. So I've got a bit more patience, and I come at it from a little different angle if I can.
Good point. Yeah. So we're constantly doing social media during the week, and I'm always on Brian Jay's website looking at photos of this, that, and the other thing. And there's a couple of photos from the final round at Laguna Seca when Nicola Canepa was racing for Westby in place of the injured Matthew Scholz. And you're on the starting line and you're standing next to him and you're kind of looking down the road. And it looks, if I captioned, I would say it's, see the future, be the future. But I'm sure that's not how you say it to him. So what do you say to a guy like Canepa, who is, a Yamaha test rider and endurance rider? Like, you've been an endurance rider internationally as well. But, what are you saying to a guy like that on the starting grid?
Heck, I don't remember what I said to him in particular.
You remind him the first turn goes left.
Yeah,
that's what it looked like.
We were probably discussing a couple of the riders in front of him and where the start lights were, a few ideas of how to approach and where to be and positioning and things like that with Nicola. I don't have he and I are friends. We've known each other for quite a few years and been cordial with one another. He's helping Garrett over there doing spotting for the team over there with Garrett, the way I have been doing here. And then, of course, he's a very fast rider in his own right. He's always tested quite well on their bikes. He's winning races on on the Yart Endurance Yamahas and raced in MotoGP, raced, World Superbike, the Moto E. He's involved in so many of those things that, but for him, again, it was just basically a spotter and a friend on the grid to encourage you and say, hey, man, you're going to be all right. These are the guys that, these are their strengths. These are their weaknesses. And here's what you can go out there and kind of look forward to, or look for when you get out there, and just pass along different things like that. Now, if it's Bobby or one of these young guys, even Melissa, usually if I was looking up the front of the racetrack like that, Corey Ventura or somebody sitting there, I would just look at him and go, hey, man, everything you want in this world is that way. So you better go up there and get it.
It's funny. Paul recently did a little interview with Corey Ventura, and he was talking about you must have done like an AFM or something, and you beat him or something, but
of course I did.
And it gave him a lot of incentive to try to do better. So talk about that.
Yeah, during, with all the COVID stuff and everything. And at the time, after Daytona got postponed in March, this year, they had pushed it back to the end of the year. Nobody had been on motorcycles very much. And man, when we showed up in Daytona, I had gotten to race the classic race. I had gotten to race back in Australian Superbike, and then I'd gone to the barber test. And when I got to Daytona, I was feeling pretty sharp. I was starting to feel like the old Josh, and lap times were coming really well. Everything was happening. And so I felt sharp and good on the motorcycle. And then we hit just a standstill. COVID happens and it's months at home with nothing happening. So there was an AFM race in the middle of the season, and after we had raced at MotoAmerica a couple of times, and we had our 600 just kind of mothballed to the side, and we knew that the 200 was coming at the end of the season at the time still. And I wanted to stay sharp. Melissa wanted to ride her R1 a little bit. And so we took the opportunity to go out to an AFM race. I also found a few guys that I could coach while I was there. And, but I was looking forward to it. And I just signed up for Formula Pacific on our 600, and just took our MotoAmerica spec engine that we had in it and put it back in the bike, and just wanted to stay sharp and ride my motorcycle a little bit. So I gritted up and did that. And of course, Corey did all the AFM stuff, and I think he was pretty dominant in all the 600 races and punched above his weight in Formula Pacific a little bit, but I managed to get the best of him that weekend. The old dog still got a few tricks up his sleeves.
Yeah, you cherry picker.
Yep.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Garrett and Cameron.
Okay.
Obviously, MotoAmerica has gotten a huge amount of attention because of those two guys and their recent the things they've been doing recently. Obviously, with Cameron signing to go to Moto2, and then Garrett doing so well at the end of his debut season of World Superbike racing, and then also what he did riding Valentino Rossi's bike for a day there in Catalunya. What nobody would know more than you about what Garrett had to have been going through when he's throwing his leg over that MotoGP bike for the first time. You got to do it several years ago. You also did really well. I mean, you had to have been feeling something for that kid, and how excited he was, and what a great opportunity it was, and how well he handled it.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part, I think, for him, I think harder than riding the bike for him was the fact that he was there for 2 days prior, and he had leathers and he had everything there, and he actually didn't know if he was going to get to ride until the very last minute. Mm-hmm. And I mean the very last minute. So then the garage door opens and it's pissing rain, and 50 photographers are there taking your picture because you're filling in for Valentino, right? Like, that had to be pretty overwhelming. So now you're going to go ride a track you don't know, on a MotoGP bike that you've never ridden, on Michelin's that you've never been on, in the pouring rain. And everybody scares the hell out of you because they all hate that track in the rain. But for us, we're like, well, shit, I've only ridden probably 2 tracks in my life that had one surface when it rains. Usually there's, you're dodging sealer and you're changing onto concrete and onto pavement again, or different kinds of pavement. So it was pretty much a dream for me. But he went out there and just kind of went to work, only to find out that after sitting out the first day, Valentino gets his bike back on Saturday. So
Right.
all of it had to be pretty crazy for Garrett. But, one thing he's done is maintain such a cool head and good attitude through all of it. And I mean, everything from that first race at Magna Corps, having the drama with Tom and Eugene in the first turn, and that carrying over for quite a while, and following up your first strong performance and podium finish, and then having to come up with the goods again. And so, I mean, it's been kind of a bit of a whirlwind for that guy, and he's been able to keep his head pretty level and stay focused and on task. And then he shows up here at this most recent test and gets to try a little bit of everything new and kind of go back to a track where he had ridden when he was struggling quite a bit more with the team, and then put on another good performance. And so, I said it when Garrett was in MotoAmerica that, he gets his first taste of success in the books, and he doesn't really back up too far. That's kind of where his new level stays. And he's just proven it all over again. He gets on the podium, and now all of a sudden he's going to be a consistent front runner close to that podium. And if he gets a race win in the books, it's going to be watch out, because I think he could start steamrolling those things with a little bit of confidence, and he's getting them closer and closer every day. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to good things, and I'm enjoying keeping in touch with him, and he and I text back and forth quite a bit. And it was pretty funny. I think probably the one thing I really pushed him on really early last season was, hey, if you legitimately want to be in World Superbike, you need to go to one of their races, and you need to tell them to their face. You don't need to wait till they come here. You need to go there and say, listen, I flew over here to watch this and be a part of it and be around this, because this is where I want to be. And I think that's critically important. And so he did. He went to Magna Corps, he went to France last year, and ended up signing the deal, and getting the deal done while he was there. And now he's in World Superbike. And I was texting with him in the morning after he had ridden, or in the afternoon, I guess, evening after he had ridden Valentino's bike. And I said, man, aren't you glad you went to France?
Yeah.
He was like, it's crazy how that one decision has just steamrolled so many amazing things in my life in such a short time,
Right.
So I'm so pumped that he was brave enough to give it a shot, because it was a high risk deal, to go over there and see what would happen, because we've seen a lot of guys go over there and struggle. And so
Right.
I'm pumped that he has embraced every bit of it, the lifestyle, living in Spain, training with the people there, and just in complete building a new family, and just engulfing himself in the whole motorsports atmosphere and attitude and lifestyle there in Spain, and becoming one of them, because that's the only thing that's going to give him a lot of opportunities there, and keep him there for a long time, winning, for us back here.
Okay, that brings us to Cameron. What do you think? I have a theory. I just think he got to the point where he had such an outstanding year. He's riding better than he ever has. He's got more confidence than he ever has. And I think something just inside of him said, like, now's the time. Do you think that's what happened there with the Moto2 thing?
I don't know. I mean, probably. I mean, we Cameron and I have had a lot of conversations over the years, and a lot this year. He talked to me a bit whenever, some of these things were on the table. And I had said the same thing to him plenty of times that I said to Garrett, like, dude, if you want to do this, you need to get over there and let them know, because, your management team talks to them and all that stuff's great. But, at the end of the year, at the last race of the year, half the BSB paddock goes to the last races, and they're all standing there going, hey, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. And we're all over here calling them on the phone, being like, hey guys, I'm over here too. And it's just a little different when you're in front of their face. They need to meet you. I'm like, Cameron, you're a likable guy, go over there and shake their hands and say hi and talk to them. And maybe more things will happen the way that you want them to be, because I think it was hard for him. He's a homebody and he wanted to stick around, and he likes being here with his family and his friends and living his life and all that stuff. But I can tell you from a little bit of experience, in one of the things that we talked about was that it gets harder and harder to push at the level that he's pushing if there's not a next level for you, if you're not working to get somewhere else. And you know, it's astounding that you know, Marc Marquez can do what he does, because there is no next level. And how do you stay motivated day in and day out to beat the same people you've beaten so many times before? And like, not to speak like in an arrogant way, but it's difficult because you have to believe in yourself like so much, and believe that those guys can't beat you, to be able to manage all of the hard days, the good days, the bad days, a little bit of everything, and be ready to go when things aren't going perfectly and you need to pull off something. You got to believe that it's because you're better than those guys is why you can do that. And so eventually what happens is some young hotshot like Cameron was to me comes along and shows some incredible speed and starts to beat on you a little bit, but you're still competitive. So it's hard to go home and reinvent yourself after a decade, to start doing things differently and come up with a new plan to beat the same people over again.
Right.
You know, someone that you've already beaten before. And so let's just say, as an example, if Bobby or Cam Petersen starts getting in there and taking wins away from him regularly, heads up, it's hard to go home and just decide you're going to train harder and do all this stuff. If you're still competitive, you just go, well, I'm just going to ride better this time. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a different game plan. It's hard to completely reinvent yourself and go back to pushing at the very top level and pushing your own limits further and further out there. And so I think that this was a necessary evil for him, to give himself options in racing for the foreseeable future, and continue to take his own personal level and test it and push it forward. And I mean, sure, we'd like to see him in GP rather than Moto2, and it's going to be scary going in there at 27 years old in a class full of axe murderers. But I don't think that there is, honestly, from our pack, I don't know that there's a better person more prepared for it than Cameron. I think he's going to pass with flying colors, personally.
Josh, this is so you had Cameron as a teammate, and when he came into the team, this is going to take a lot of introspection, but I think you have a lot of that. So I think you can probably answer this question. You, as your career was continuing and you were still having a lot of success, did you
were
see
saying
something
dwindling.
Cameron? What's that?
You were going to say dwindling.
No, I wasn't. But I don't even.
He was.
I know he was.
I wasn't, because I'm not even talking about dwindling now. But did you feel like, you said you have to go back and reinvent yourself? Did you feel like you saw something in Cameron, and did you feel almost like you were holding him at arm's length for a while, or you were only holding him back going to be able to hold him back for a certain amount of time? Did you see something in him where he was going to be like, you know, snatch the pebble from the hand, so to speak, as they say in Kung Fu?
No, not so much. Not so much. I had the group of people before me, you know, there was a lot of, I don't know if the word's angst, but there was a lot of, you know, your competitors, you weren't friends with your competitors, you know,
right.
Everybody was out to get everybody else, because everybody had to be a macho man and show them, you know, who was what. And I didn't really think that was the case, because I would race you in my backyard for a drink, you know, for a trophy, as hard as I would for a national superbike race. It didn't matter. I hated to lose, no matter what we were doing. And I told, you know, I was pretty straight with Cameron. I said, I'll help you with anything, but you know, when we're on the racetrack, I will race you to the absolute best of my ability. I will never give you a free win. If you beat me, you won it. You earned it every single time. But for sure, I saw things in Cameron, and I knew, man, dude, when he ran the table, almost Gagne got that one race from him in what, 2000 and was it 13?
13.
Super
Yep.
Sport.
MotoAmerica.
I mean, it it was pretty obvious to see and to watch him ride. And I remember we got to test at the end of the year at New Orleans on like the Monday after, and we had some journalists ride the Superbike. I was testing some new Superbike parts, and Cameron was there riding a 600. And at the end of 2012, I think. And I followed him around I was on the Superbike, he was on the 600. And I remember watching him. He got into this spot a little hot, and I saw his little shoulders kind of shrug up a little tight, and I go, oh, there it is. I finally saw it, like I finally saw him do something that got tight and we got him to pucker a little bit, and then, yeah, when he got on the Superbike, I got to see it a few more times, but when he was good, he was freaking amazing. And when he wasn't amazing, he was still there in the fight every single time. And so I knew it was going to be tough. And, then we got to 2015, and that was probably the best real battle I took to him was 2015, and we were fortunate that we were able to kind of sweep the table that year, and I won 10 races to his 8, and he won the championship. And then 2016 he kind of started to stretch things out a little bit on me and beat me up a little bit, and this is where that experience comes that I talk about, you know what I mean, that I didn't go back and reinvent myself the way I had done before whenever I'd been put into a difficult situation after having the crazy success that I had through, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, where things were really going my way. 15 was still pretty good. And there I had 5 or 6 really solid years under my belt. And then this kid starts coming and beating up on me. And in 2013, when I got beat up on, I went back and hunkered down, and I did more work than I had ever done. And I showed up ready to kill in 2012. And I just said, well, I just got a little work to do, and just tried to grip the bars a little tighter and force things a little more. And I was still competitive. I still won some races, but I wasn't the guy I was before. And then, 2017, it just got worse because I kind of knew my future. And I let it do my head in. I wish I could right the wrongs of that year and go back and have that one over again, because I think I could do better stuff than what I did. But,
Yeah, but Josh, here's the thing I want to ask you about. And this is a weird deal. We've talked about this before, but the fact that what turned out to be a year that ended in you not racing for Yamaha anymore, it was a year that most riders would absolutely dream to have, being ranked where you were ranked and doing what you did. I think you still won a couple races that year, and it was kind of weird. And I mean, you always said, you're going to have to pry the bike from my cold finger. So I want to ask you, the perspective I want to know here is, you didn't say, okay, so Yamaha's done with me, I want to go and race for somebody else. So you got Tony Elias this year, who isn't done either, and he said he isn't going to retire. But he said he doesn't want it. He's not going to ride the Suzuki anymore. He wants to try something else out. Do you think he's going to get another ride? And do you have any thoughts about what might happen with him at this point?
I have no idea. Like, I don't know what options he really has.
Right.
I got an idea of a few of the things that are going on out there, at least where things are leaning. And I haven't heard his name involved in much of any of them. So, right. I mean, nothing I'm close to or involved with do I know anything about it. I mean, I don't know. I figured Tony's got connections all over the world. I know he likes it here. I know he wants to be here, and he kind of dabbled in supporting teams the way that him and his father kind of did with Honos, at right. some parts of the year, and with some different riders in different classes. So I don't really know what his plan is or what he's talking about, but whatever it is, I mean, if the guy wants to go racing, I mean, maybe I would imagine that guy's been racing his whole life. Like, he's been racing longer than I have, right. Even though I'm older than him. He started a lot younger, and it's in his blood. And hell, I still don't want to quit, Shit, I still wish they'd let me out there. I'll be a 46-year-old Superbike star. Give me a chance. Let me put my mind to it with the lessons I've learned over the last couple of years sitting on the sidelines. And I think I could still be a formidable opponent and be very, very dangerous out there. And, but, one thing that happened whenever I was getting out was there wasn't real, I had not made real talks otherwise. And I wasn't real thrilled with the idea of going out there and racing against what I felt like was my team,
Right.
you know, the Yamaha
Right.
team. So yeah, I wanted to race, but at what expense, honestly? And I was already in my 40s. I was 42 years old. So, I mean, I had said out loud for a lot of years that if I made it to 40, man, that would be quite an accomplishment and a career I would be proud of. And I made it to 42 racing competitively. And I think it would have gone on longer had the team not shrank from a 4-rider team to a 3-rider team. So, I mean, look at the writing on the wall and where it went from there. It went from 4-3, and the next year JD Beach wins the Super Sport Championship and ends up without a ride at Yamaha.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, I wasn't alone. I didn't get singled out. It was just, man, it was the economy of the times, you know, and I managed to find a way to survive and still be around my racing family, which was incredibly important to me. But
yeah, and still be aligned with the Yamaha brand too, which, you know, that's the situation with Tony. He kind of walked away from Suzuki. That you didn't do that and still haven't done that with Yamaha.
Well, there's still Yamaha blue blood in my veins, you know, and but I'm lucky that I have that because that relationship is, you know, we were mutually beneficial for one another, and I want my son to be involved in racing and or riding. My wife is so involved with it that, you know, like you gotta use half a brain, and we all want to continue to work together. So, you know, I would I trade all of that for maybe another year of racing? I don't know that I would, you know, as much as I want to be racing. At the same time, your decisions start changing a little bit when you're talking about, would I give it all up for one more year? I don't know. I don't know that I would, as much as I want that year to happen. You know, I like riding motorcycles, and being around motorcycles for the rest of my life is important to me too.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this this Yamaha blue running through your veins, because something happened this week that I wanted to get your reaction to. So Yamaha's had a 600cc sport bike since about 1984 when they came out with the FJ 600, and it went through the FCR. Obviously, the R6 debuted in 1999, and there's been various iterations of that. And in a little footnote at the bottom of a press release announcing new models for this year, they mentioned, oh, and by the way, we're not going to be, we've discontinued the R6 in America for 2021. And we've heard about this race R6 in Europe or wherever. But first of all, did that shock you that they kind of just said the heck with a 600 middleweight bike? And what do you think that is going to mean to Supersport in general? I mean, obviously Kawasaki won the championship this year, and Suzuki was strong with Sean Dillon Kelly as well. But, you know, Yamaha was right there. So, you know, what does this bode for the future of Supersport, and also about Yamaha kind of getting rid of a middleweight bike?
Man, first I was heartbroken.
Yeah. You love that bike.
I've been a firm believer in middleweight super sport racing. You know, that's where I started. And so it holds a special place in my heart for sure. And me racing Melissa's MP13 racing R6 last year was some of the most fun I've had on a motorcycle, even over the superbike, the end of the last superbike years. I just absolutely love everything about riding that motorcycle. It's so much fun. And in some ways, I think it's the most pure racing that there is. There's not much electronics, and just they're bikes that you can absolutely grind on and learn a lot about good racing. And so I'm a huge believer in the segment, and it breaks my heart. Now, this all started, I think, when Honda decided not to sell a 600 in Europe a couple of years ago.
That's right.
And I thought that was the first step, you know. I didn't know Yamaha would be the next company to really jump in and go that direction. And for sure, it makes me sad. But I think there was some other stuff written in there that was a little on the vague side, that there's possibly some new stuff coming. And I'm hoping that's the case. and that they find another way to fill that segment, because I think the R3 jump in the super sport category to the R1 is a bit of a big one.
It is, yeah. Yeah,
But you know, the R1 is their flagship bike, and I think it, you know, when we looked at it, you know, because Melissa's gone through the math quite a few times, you know, right now, if you were going to go racing and you were new to our series, the stock 1000 is the most economical way to go racing, and super sport was considerably more expensive to go racing than some of the other, all of the other support classes. So I think that you know, again, a sign of the times that the development costs in the 600s were near matching that of the 1000s, and the insurance and a little bit of everything across the board. So I don't know, there's not been any real updates in 600s in quite some time.
True.
And so I guess the writing was kind of on the wall, and it looks like now, even in the World Championship, they're going to start kind of some experimentation with bigger bikes that are now what they're considering middleweights, and allowing them into the class with some performance leveling, you know, the way they have in Junior Cup. And I mean, we've seen it before. We went through it with Daytona Sport Bike, and so maybe that's what's coming in the future, or things are just gonna, you know, it's hard because the waters just get muddied, and it probably gets hard. If they would all stick to 600s, it would be one thing, but then one guy comes out with a 636 and only offers that in certain countries, and then all the fun kind of gets taken out of the racing, and the reason to do all the development on your 600 kind of goes out the window. So if you're going to allow bigger bikes in the class, it makes it hard to fight so hard for that one. So it's a bit of a mess.
Super Sport this season, though, was so good. I mean, it was obviously the best class we had in terms of competitiveness. Every one of those races was fantastic to watch. So it's just kind of ironic that this situation with, I know you'd mentioned about Honda and then with Yamaha, but, you know, Yamaha still did well this year. But, you know, like I said, Suzuki and Kawasaki were right up there. And that class produces such amazing racing, as you said. And I know it's near to your heart, plus the fact that I know you like riding the R6 quite a bit. So
it is, and I'm still a believer that it is the number one choice for me as far as grooming people to be ready to race in Superbike and things like that. Like I'm a big believer in the super sport class, and you know, when people say, hey, you know, we're thinking of jumping Twins Cup or Junior Cup to stock 1000, I can understand it from the economical side, but if you really want to make it forward, I felt like the 600 was the way to go, because it was just, it has always offered such good racing. I mean, as long as I've been involved in racing, 600 Super Sport was where it was at. That's why they always sent their Superbike riders down to ride in Super Sport back when we didn't race twice a weekend, every single weekend, you know, back in the day. All the Superbike riders were a part of the Super Sport class also, because selling 600s was so important to the companies. But I think now it's just that the development costs are so high, the performance level is so high of those Super Sport 600s, and they're looking to do things in slightly more affordable ways to introduce more people to the sport.
So Josh, I know we can always go, we could go another couple hours probably on this, but I think we're going to wrap it up now. Paul, did you have anything else for Josh?
Oh, again, just thanks for always joining us, Josh, when we need you to. It's always good to speak with you, and you're always up for a good podcast. So thanks for being here today.
Cool, man. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Let me know when you got something cool to talk about again.
All right.
We
Thank you.
Something cool, and you always have some good responses, Josh. So thank you. And I want to also thank the fans for listening to this podcast. Right now, during this off season, there's not any racing going on, but there still is a lot of racing that you can watch via MotoAmerica's YouTube channel. So please subscribe to that channel. And there's a lot of races that we're loading up on there, and they've been very popular. A lot of people are enjoying watching some of these previous years. We did a lot of stuff recently where we loaded 2017 season on there and got to see Josh Hayes back in his heyday a little bit, racing with all the boys, Roger Hayden and everybody else. So, you know, please keep subscribing to that and watching that stuff and before you know it, the actual racing is going to begin again for 2021. So Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Sean.